of it, make a good meal of it, stick to your old-fashioned beer. Now don't be afraid of it, drink till you're made of it. Now all together.
Hello everybody, it's Mark McDermott, your one-take beer reviewer, and it is now 10:30 and October the 28th, and the St. Louis Cardinals have just won the World Series, topping the Texas Rangers. And as a White Sox fan, we usually root for the Cardinals because they're our second favorite team in the league, which is that most of the season they're the ones who are playing the Cubs. And, well, because we usually review beers available in Chicago, we have a little extra surprise this time, though. A beer from St. Louis, and not by the Bud people. Now, would I have had a beer handy in case Texas won? Well, because of Texas's incredibly Byzantine liquor laws, they're really not allowed to sell or market a beer much stronger than 8%. Anything over 4%, they have to call a malt liquor. So I know there are some brewers right now suing to try to change that, but I did have something ready. It was a special beer from Spain, a Belgian ale, which goes under the name Estrella Damm. But we won't have to do that today. Instead, what we have is a little treat that I picked up in my last trip to St. Louis, a Schlafly Reserve barrel-aged barley wine ale. This is a 2006 vintage. It's a pretty hefty bottle. You're not going to see me drink this all in one show. And it is not a bourbon barrel-aged barley wine like many others. Instead, it was just aged in new Missouri oak. And I'm looking at my data here on the screen. It is a 10.2% alcohol. That could change according to the vintage, but we've had this sitting around. I picked it up at the Schlafly Bottle Works in 2007, and this is probably ready to go for a ride. Let's assume we can actually pop this thing. Ah, okay. Well, we have a little problem with our crud. Yes, where there's a beer, there's a way. Couldn't quite fit the bottle opener under the bottle cap with this extra rim around it. Our glass of choice is a little chalice. This one's a souvenir of the original Barrel-Aged Beer Festival. The Festival of Wood and Barrel-Aged Beers, the successor to that after they couldn't secure a venue, is coming up in a couple of weekends. And this has now been sitting in a bottle for almost 5 years. It was aged, as they said, in Missouri oak, and it pours pretty cloudy with a still a light brownish color. It's going to be more reminiscent of a Bigfoot barley wine. And usually when a beer gets that old, it has trouble kicking up ahead, but this one has come up with a pretty good one. Oh, let's get a good look at the bottle now that I've gotten it out of the box, if I can get it properly into the light. Well, we'll probably put an insert into that. So it's nice to see that an old beer like this can still hold on to a head. And the smell is more fruity than you might expect from a wood-aged beer, I think. There's still some pretty good alcohol smell to it. Taste is, it's a pretty thick malt. This one has soured just a little bit. And that kind of goes with the fruit esters that probably came from the ferment. Now, because this aged in new oak, you might not expect it to take on any of the beasties that might be found in a used bourbon or whiskey barrel. But this still has come across with a little bit of sourness. The malt is rather light, as it were, for this beer, which is a bit of a surprise, but it is not a distraction by any means. I am trying to decide if there are any hops to this. I'm going to guess it was using English style hops, and they are pretty well diminished after all this time, which is again to be expected in this style. It's kind of a crapshoot when you're doing a hoppy barley wine, whether the hop aroma will stay or go. But this one is just a slight amount of bittering, and it has dried out pretty well in the bottle. And I'm going to say, well, it's not going to really knock your socks off like a well-aged Bigfoot or Thomas Hardy's, but it's pretty interesting as barley wines go. It has not gotten syrupy or medicinal. It has still held on to a lot of its malt character, as I said, a little fruity ale quality and some sourness. So I'm going to say this is a nice surprise, and because you're taking a bottle and aging it for years and years, your results are going to vary, and that can't be helped. But in my case, the Schlafly Reserve barrel-aged barley wine is quite a nice surprise. And if you are in St. Louis near the Schlafly Bottle Works and you don't want to deal with the king of beers, the king of beers with its new Belgian headmasters, you may want to stop by there at the Schlafly Bottle Works, and they have a nice restaurant there with a lot of taste and a lot of souvenir bottled beers to try, and pick up this year's vintage. They're not that expensive as a beer in this size goes, at least it wasn't when I was there in 2007, and pick some up and cellar it and see what you get.
Drink a good deal of it, make a good meal of it, stick to your old-fashioned